The upcoming session is on new procurement rules, in which the panel will discuss emerging power procurement options for CNI consumers like green tariffs, VPPA, P2P, green exchanges, IREX, and more. For this session, we have with us Mr. Vikram Sridharan, General Manager, Public Policy, Amazon, Mr. Sriram Madhapura, General Manager, Solar and Storage, Shell, Mr. Pinaki Bhattacharya, MD and CEO, AMP Energy India, Mr. Aman Narula, Partner, Energy and Infrastructure, Trilegal, Mr. Rajesh Mediratta, Director, Strategy and Regulatory Affairs, IEX. Mr. Mediratta and Mr. Pinaki are expected to join us shortly. To set the context and steer the course of the conversation, we have with us Ms. Sangeeta Suresh, Associate Director, Bridge to India, and Mr. Varun Agarwal, Associate Director, Sustainable Business at WWF India, which is also a strategic partner for this event. Over to you, Sangeeta.
Thank you. Thank you, Ankita. And thank you, panelists, for being here with us today. It is really a pleasure to host a panel which is so diverse. So I'm really happy to be a part of this event today. I would like to set the context for today's event a little bit. So I would like to walk us through what we have now and what we would like to see in the future. So I'm quickly sharing a presentation, which is basically a single slide. To set the context for today, we have been speaking yesterday and a little bit this morning about all the existing options for corporate consumers. And as we all know, we have open access as the biggest route of corporate renewable procurement, followed by rooftop solar. While these markets, as you can see, are big chunks and they contribute really in a big way to the corporate renewable procurement. We've also had RECs which were working well until some time ago, and right now they're mired in legal issues, and there's no trading in the since the last year. So there is the REC market, which is an option, but it remains to sort of still take off. There is a year-old green power exchange that has been introduced. IEX has done well. There's over 2 billion units of power that has been transacted in the IEX market. And finally, you have the green tariffs as well. So with all of these options available, we have to see the way forward. With all of these options, we have to see the way forward. And it is very important for us to understand that while there are options, there are a lot of legal and operational issues, and some of them can be time consuming. We are here to discuss what is the time frame in which the new options are viable. We have other options such as VPPA, which is predominantly available in multiple parts of the world. But what is limiting its offtake in India? That is something else we'll be discussing as well. So before I dive into the whole topic, we have Varun Agarwal from WWF India and also heading the READY initiative, a strategic partner for this conference, who will walk us through a little bit and then take the conversation forward with our speakers today. Over to you, Varun.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sangeeta, for setting the context very nicely. And as Sangeeta already said, WWF India and READY program, we are a strategic partner for this conference. And just to give a context of what we have been doing in this space about WWF, which is largely, I'd say, perceived as a conservation and environmental NGO. But just to give you a background, WWF was the first civil society organization in the world which came up with a vision of a world powered with 100% renewable energy by 2050. So it goes, I would say, dates back to 2010, and then we came up with the vision for India also to be powered by 100% RE in 2014. And in line with these efforts, in 2018, WWF India and CII launched the READY initiative, that's Renewable Energy Demand Enhancement. And basically, it's an alliance of CNI consumers to enhance the uptake of renewable electricity in India and also to address the barriers and challenges which are restricting the uptake of renewables. Also, under the program, we've been working on multiple fronts, and one of our focuses under the READY initiative has been to expand the scope of corporate RE procurement and RE procurement at large in India by introduction of alternative RE procurement models, looking at models like virtual power purchase agreements, green tariffs, IREX, dedicated renewable energy exchange, and green tariffs. And in line with this work, we launched a report way back in December 2019, where we summarized some of these models which could be piloted in India, where we put forth some of these models and reviewed these based on their uptake in the other parts of the world, as Sangeeta was also mentioning. And I'm happy to say that Bridge to India has been a very important partner in this work. And since then, we've been trying to spearhead some of these conversations at the highest level with the policymakers, regulators in India, in order to enhance the uptake of this alternative corporate RE procurement models. And I'm happy to say that some of the work has found a lot of receptivity, and it has led to the establishment of a constructive dialogue at the highest level with the policymakers and regulators. And we are very, in a way, we're looking forward with optimism. And of course, there are certain challenges. That's why we thought it's very, very important on this second day of conference to deliberate on where we are headed and how we can enhance or promote the uptake of some of these models. And without further ado, I would like to kickstart the discussion. And thank you to all the panelists, all the distinguished speakers who've joined us today for this session. I would like to begin with Amazon, Vikram. As one of the, to kickstart the discussion, I think it's very important to build in the CNI angle, and because the challenges that you're facing are, I would say, multi-pronged, and we would like to understand from you to begin with. As one of the large CNI consumers, of course, in India and also internationally, what are Amazon's sustainability and RE commitments? And also, we are aware that Amazon has committed to sourcing all their goods and services sustainably across the globe. And how are these initiatives being scaled up for your supply chain as well? So that's just to begin with. Vikram, over to you.
Hi, thanks, Varun. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sangeeta, for that introduction as well. I'm on a slightly bad network, so I'll turn my video off if you don't mind. Otherwise, there's a risk of the line dropping. So, but I just wanted to start by saying that, look, the slide that you presented, the first slide, Sangeeta, that covered a whole gamut of, RE procurement model, and thereafter Varun also spoke about VPPAs, etc. If I were to look at our overall, RE goal, which is to use 100% renewable energy across all our operations globally by 2025. And so this essentially covers all our financially integrated subsidiaries, which means any Amazon company that you see today in India or globally needs to be using 100% renewable energy by 2025, right? I am from Amazon Web Services, which is basically the cloud business. So if I were to talk about that, we have regions all over the world. We have one operational region in India, in Bombay, which is a cluster of data centers. That will need to be powered by RE by 2025. We have an upcoming region in Hyderabad that's going to be launched by next year, sometime, next year. That will also need, renewable energy, 100% renewable energy by 2025. If I were to look at it from a slightly broader context and say, for example, talk about some of our other use cases in India, corporate offices, like we have many corporate offices, branch offices, we have fulfillment centers, warehouses, sorting centers, right? All of these subsidiaries, all of these entities in India and globally have to be using 100% renewable energy by 2025. Now, as you can imagine, it's a very ambitious ask. It's not easy, given the constraints that we have, and and also what happens is each one of these entities and each one of these subsidiaries have like a different use case for RE, right? So not everybody wants to use RE in the same way to the same extent. So to give you an example, say a corporate office and a fulfillment center could use a rooftop solar, right?
Right.
But say our operations, like a data center operations, obviously have no use for rooftop solar. I mean, that does not meet the requirement there. So you'll have to look at, offsite options, right? You'll need to look at offsite utility scale renewable procurement options there, and so on. So given our commitment to using 100% renewable energy across all our operations, essentially the key ask that we have is to have scalable renewable energy procurement model, things that we can scale very easily with, and things whereby we can procure and meet our RE goals and ambitions. And these require utility scale RE projects. Right? I mean, not all of them can be fulfilled using rooftop solar, etc.
Yeah.
So if I were to sum up my biggest challenge in one sentence, it would be that this lack of availability of innovative RE procurement model right today is probably the biggest challenge for us in India from an Amazon perspective. I think to give a very like a quick summary of some of them. One, obviously, if you were to look at how do we overcome these, first is we will require unrestricted open access for sure, which means that no direct or indirect restrictions on contract demand, banking restrictions. I think your first slide talked about that, Sangeeta, right? So, I mean, while some states are allowing open access, but then, you have restrictions with respect to contract demand. Similarly, some, states have got banking restrictions. So these need to go in tandem. If, one remains and one is allowed, we still can't, say get more than 30 or 35% of our renewable energy. We also need, RE procurement model like VPPA is very important. I know we were having some discussions beforehand, but, honestly, this is something we believe can truly help us scale. It's something that, and we can talk about it later during the discussion, but we truly believe it has many advantages. And it's an ideal sort of a procurement model for a market like India.
Yeah.
I think also very importantly, we believe having bilateral transfer of RECs is also critical, between the power producer and the off-taker, which is basically us, AWS or Amazon, right? We have a traceability tenet, and this allows essentially for us, which is the off-taker, to demonstrate that we have procured RE from a specific power plant. Now, this is fairly standard in most EU and US contracts, the bilateral transfer of RECs. But in India, the power producers can sell RECs only on power exchange and not bilaterally to the off-taker or corporate. So, I mean, if I were to sum it up, these are like 2 or 3 key challenges. And in terms of use cases or the models using which we procure renewable energy, I think I've already highlighted those earlier.
Yeah, thank you, Vikram. Even I think you really summed it up quite well in terms of the models which are required, the challenges that you're facing. But I'm just taking a step back in terms of the goals, very ambitious targets as well, 100% RE by 2025. So if we just compare with where Amazon is currently, the status of RE procurement, where are we at? If that's something that you can share, how much of it has been already met and what's the way forward? And just a quick, I would say, insight into that would help.
Yeah, sure. So I'll not get into India-specific numbers, but we have reached about 65% renewable energy utilization across all our businesses. So if you read our latest sustainability report, so as of 2020, we had already reached 65% renewable energy usage. We also became last year the world's largest corporate purchaser of renewable energy. And we had about 232 odd global utility scale renewable energy projects that we were using.
Yeah, indeed, I would say that's an achievement, of course. And Sangeeta, if you have any questions before
Sure. Thank you, Varun, and thank you, Vikram. That was insightful. I think I want to zoom out from the India-specific story a little bit, and then bring in Sriram as well right now. I hope you're there, Sriram. I bring in Sriram since we are talking about Amazon being one of the largest corporate procurement buyers. There has been headlines about both Shell also selling, also getting into corporate procurement agreements with Amazon internationally. But even beyond that, like I started, we have very specific products in India, open access and rooftop being key among them. You are providing various bundled services. You have experience in VPPA as well as green tariff models across the globe. I would love to hear from you about your experience so far. Specific countries would be great. And if you could sort of sum it up with what you need for those products to come to India, a couple of them being VPPAs and green tariffs, which are a sort of green tariffs, the lowest hanging fruit in some senses, and then we could go on to VPPA and timelines. Over to you, Sriram.
Okay, thank you, Sangeeta, first of all, for the opportunity. Thank you to Bridge to India as well. Maybe I take a step back a little bit and sort of provide some context to what sort of Shell's goals are. I mean, I think we as a leading oil and gas major are really adapting to the energy transition, and that's not surprising. We have announced, net zero goals by 2050, including Scope 3 emissions, which is actually quite a bit for us, which is probably more than significantly much more than Scope 1 and 2 for us. It includes our energy that we trade as well. We for every barrel of oil and gas we extract, we actually trade 3 times that, right? And we are one of the largest power retailers as well in the world. We do something like 280 terawatt hours, and our goal is to get to about 560 terawatt hours in 2030, right? So if you combine that with the net zero goals we have, it's fairly aggressive, right? If we really want to make electricity a core part of our business, including oil, gas, chemicals. So electricity is really one of the verticals we'd like to expand into, right? In that energy transition. So if you try to answer your question, what are we trying to do? I mean, clearly we are very active in a lot of the liberalized markets, US, Europe. We have, you referred to the plant, we have an offshore wind plant that's in construction in the Netherlands that is going to supply PPA to Amazon. We are really an integrated play. We are trying to become an integrated player. We have made significant acquisitions in that context. If you look at several of them, especially talking about new products, right? I mean, there is an acquisition called LineJump in UK, Nextracker in Europe. These are really virtual power plants, companies that are really VPP operators to say, and they're really talking to a number of distributed power assets and really providing VPP services, right? A lot of that doesn't really exist in India, but if you think about the pathway to able to get to 100% renewables and having different kinds of products, you really need some of these capabilities, I would say, right? And we are taking the steps in that direction. Clearly, from an India perspective, India is a really important market for us. We have a number of investments here, and that is increasing as well. But from a products perspective here, sort of focusing on India, I think we really heard a really good perspective from Vikram, and I probably want to take a slightly different perspective. I would say in terms of how do we work with the constraints we have. I mean, towards getting to the 100% RE goals we have for Amazon and a number of corporate off-takers, right?
Yeah.
I think we need to create signals in the market, if I can say that, right? Right now, today, I'll give you a simple example. There's no really good time of day pricing in the market, right? So there is the peak difference between peak pricing and non-peak pricing doesn't really reflect the reality. You could get a ton of solar into the grid for a number of years, but will the difference in peak pricing and solar pricing, for example, reflect that, right? If there is such reflection, then you create new products. Then there's incentives for large scale utility storage for someone to build grid scale utility storage at the plant to create those products. So I think if I think about it a little bit in a different way, from how you get to a 24-hour RE penetration, I know we are working on a lot of new products, hybrids and so on and so forth. But the market I don't think there are enough market markers in India to really enable that. I think that's one point of view I would say. And you talked about green tariffs as well. We are doing this in the UK. We have a current offering of green tariffs in the UK. I think Maharashtra is trying to do that here in India. I think we need more of that, and that's obviously clearly needs to be over and above RPO procurements. That there is a clear demand for that, and the challenge for green certificates, for example, to be useful, really is that the acquirers, right, like the Amazons of the world, need a couple of confirmations there, right? One, it is additionality. One, there's actually traceability to if you buy a green certificate in the UK, we have a guaranteed origination, right? So some of these stuff, the product attributes are missing, I would say. So we need strengthening of existing product attributes, and we also need strong market signals for new products to develop.
Okay, thank you. On that note, I think there's multiple things I can go into there, so I'll come back to you, Sriram. I think I want to dive into the green tariffs part of it a little bit, and this is open to both Pinaki and Amar as well. We've got the new green open access rules, which is encouraging what a few states are doing. One is it is still premium. I'm not sure what is the appetite for consumers to sort of go for a premium product. And two, the additionality angle that Sriram brought in, how will this actually add new capacity at all? And that is a question that we have to answer. And finally, the traceability is something, traceability and the environment attributes as well, because in the current form, for example, Maharashtra's example, if you look at Maharashtra, the attributes stay with the DISCOM. So if a consumer is buying green power, but the attributes stay with the DISCOM, there's not enough incentive. So there are quite a few issues that have to be sorted. So what are the ways in which green tariffs can become more attractive in India? Do you have any suggestions on this? Both Amar and Pinaki, over to you.
Yeah, I think so. Amar, you can have a go first, but I think so. This question is better directed at somebody like Amazon who's wanting to fulfill their sort of green targets. I mean, we can actually we are competing with essentially the DISCOM. So I will definitely say it's not the best way, because one is that there is no consistency in the pricing, because whatever the GTAM market is, whatever the tariffs are there, so the pricing is premium. The issue is then again there is no long-term visibility on that. Third is that the attributes, if they are not transferred, then it is of no use to many of the corporate customers. So to us actually, and it will not lead us to sort of put capacities. It is the DISCOM which is selling us. So for us to put capacities, and maybe I will direct your question to a separate direction altogether in terms of what we think is actually going to work in terms of taking any company to 100% renewables. Is that, see, first two models are pretty prevalent. That is the rooftop model and the intrastate open access model. So in the intrastate open access model, anyway, there is a progress that is happening in different states. But yeah, things like contract demand removal and restriction removal and banking, sort of availability, LTOA and connection agreements being available, that will accelerate the pace. For example, in Andhra and Telangana, it's not allowed. You cannot do intrastate open access. So then the third model is interstate open access. So what we do, we try to partner with the company to say that how we can take it to 100% renewable. So the third one is underutilized, and that potential is massive. And intentionally as a company also, because we are in the utility sector also, where we are actually supplying the green pumps, who are actually then competing with us in the open access market. So in one market we are competing, in the other market we are supplying them the green power. So what is needed, which is a very simple fix, is that the VPPA market and the interstate open access, that will throw up the opportunity multifold. Essentially today you're like a 1 gigawatt kind of a market open access. This can grow like 3-4 times, because there are like we have like ISTS substations with connectivity and land in Rajasthan, which is the lowest cost of production. Right now, the VPPA mechanism, it just requires the CERC to make a clarification that a CFD and the VPPA is not a derivative contract. That is a single thing. I mean, that can be done, and then that will just open up the entire floodgates for the VPPA market. And then there are other entities. So I would say those are much better mechanisms to than this green tariff mechanism and all. These are I would say band-aid solution. The fundamental solution is putting large power plants connected to the PGCIL substations, selling either through the VPPA mode or interstate open access mode to the customers wherever they are, without any restrictions. That will just open up the opportunity. So, that was my view. I think so. I can hear from my colleague on this thing.
Sure.
So I sort of agree. If I could just come in here. Firstly, thanks to Bridge for India for organizing this. I agree with Pinaki that it's not a long-term solution. And I will let the others, the procurers, talk about it. I think they'll be able to give you a better perspective. But the one issue that I wanted to highlight is that, like you said, Sangeeta, the attribute is retained by the DISCOM in this case, right? So now, effectively, what is happening? Why are they retaining the attribute? Because they need to fulfill their RPO, right? Yeah. So now, effectively, the DISCOM is trying to monetize by having whatever the delta that they are asking for the green tariff. They're trying to monetize their compliance with law. And it also ties in with what the DISCOM's general view is, that I want to read whatever Pinaki spoke about. What is restrictive for open access is ESS. And it comes down to the same thing, that you're cross-subsidizing someone else because the DISCOM has a universal supply obligation, right? So from my perspective, it's something that I don't think that, from an initiative perspective, the ability for a consumer to buy green power without actually entering into a separate PPA or investing money, if you talk about captive, it's an option, right? But it's not if you look at it universally, it's unique, definitely, but it also suggests it's not workable. And like I said, my principal objection is that I don't think it's correct for you to monetize your own compliance.
Right. And just to add to Amar's point, which is an excellent point, is actually what is happening is that because of this RPO compliance, they actually then end up buying from what they are buying from SECI and NTPC, and they get the ISTS waivers because they are saying that we are meeting our compliance. So on one side, we are supplying to SECI and SECI supplies to DISCOM, and they get this ISTS waiver, which the industry doesn't get. Industry momentarily was getting it, at least the people who are obligated entities, but they are not getting that. They are getting that waiver, and they're asking for a premium by selling to the same customers. So it is not a fair system, and I don't think it's going to sort of be sustainable. Anything that is fundamentally not very fair is not sustainable in the long run. So that's my view also.
Varun, yeah, go on, Srinath.
I agree with Pinaki, but I think I have a slightly different construct here, right? I mean, I think we talked about a little, seeing through the CSSI morphs everything, right? You have a different lens. So the CSS distorts so much that you don't know what is right, what is wrong. You're trying to fix it with the CSS on. If you remove CSS, then you can kind of say what, but then putting a tons of generation in Rajasthan and using transmission for 15% of the time or 20% of the time is not sustainable. You can get 20, 30, 40 gigawatts maybe there, but eventually you need to monetize such that you can put lots of generation in Rajasthan and put storage behind the meter and get a 24-hour product from there, right? In the long run, if you want to get to 450 gigawatts, you need to have distributed generation. You need to have 24-hour use of the product, right? In my view, you get hybrids and all of that stuff, but it's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem we have, right? I mean, we need more sustainable use of our transmission line. Making banking free is not the right answer, in my view, right? It is not free in the world. It can't be free here.
No, just I think what we were trying to suggest is that, let's say there are two dimensions. One is that there are three business models. One is distributed generation, intrastate open access, interstate open access, and VPPA. There are three business models. Okay. What we are saying is that we need to unleash all the three. Even distributed generation, removing this net metering and certain other restrictions should be done. In intrastate open access, things like, because there is a solution to the CSS, because you have the captive model there that works pretty well. Okay, but in that sense also we remove the restrictions on contract demand and banking limitations and all. And the third one, which is completely zero, is the interstate open access. So all the three should grow so that it's a balanced growth. And the second dimension is the technology part. So one is the solar, then what we are seeing, for instance, in Gujarat, we are doing solar wind.
We seem to have lost Pinaki's connection. But I think Is he back?
So I think so. I was. Yeah, I just sort of switched off my video. I think so. I had a bad connection.
Yeah.
So am I audible now?
You are.
Yeah. So what I was saying is I mean to Sriram's point is also important. Is that one is the business model, other is the technology, so that you are getting to more dispatchable clean energy, more efficient utilization of the grid. So that is in the distributed generation side also, bundling storage with solar, and that can be that can increase if the regulation gives a time of the day tariff, which is a very sharp delta in the peak and off peak, that will trigger the storage solution in the distributed sense. Second, intrastate open access. We are already doing solar and wind hybrid. Now, if I introduce storage and the government promotes that, and let's say in certain charges, so then you can actually keep on increasing the PLF of the plant to even 80% if required with solar, wind, and storage. So both the technology is also there, and the models are also there.
Yeah.
How you actually design the regulatory system to accelerate this deployment on both dimensions. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, Pinaki. I think we want to stick to the interstate point, and what can work in the interstate aspect is VPPs, and I think I'll let Varun take the lead on this. Varun, over to you.
Thank you, Sangeeta, and I think very interesting points made by all the panelists, and I'm conscious Amar has to leave in a few minutes. So I'll just come to one very pertinent question which has been kind of discussed time and again about jurisdiction over VPPAs. We all are aware that CERC is responsible for the physical transaction of power and CERC is responsible for the financial part. So how do you see from a legal perspective, how can the line be clearly defined for VPPAs which have components of both? So how can we go about it? Amar?
Yeah, sure. So I think there are a couple of issues which are sort of restricting VPPAs from functionality in the market. One of which is obviously, like you mentioned the jurisdiction aspect. So let's take a step back. So effectively, a VPPA is a contract for difference, right? Now, since it's a contract for difference, there is a legislation called the Securities Contract Regulation Act. Now, under that, any sort of where a price is fixed to an index or in this case, a spot market, right? Then it becomes a commodity derivative. Right. Now, under the SCRA, the government has the power to prevent certain financial transactions which could have the effect of undesirable speculation, right? So the government exercising this power has notified certain commodities, one of which is electricity, and said that these transactions have been prohibited. So this is a central government notification under the SCRA Act. So this is something which hits VPPAs right at the heart. So now this is something which will require an amendment. The notification will require the amendment. But that's one of the few things. The other aspect is the jurisdiction. Now, the battle on jurisdiction between CERC and SECI. So look, under the Electricity Act, CERC has the jurisdiction as far as interstate distribution, transmission, everything related to electricity is concerned, right? So it's the regulator. Now, under the SCRA Act, you have SEBI, which is the regulator. So they have the power under the SCRA Act to deal with anything relating to any financial transaction, any future forward contract, right? Which is where a synthetic PPA or a VPPA would fall under, right? So you have one regulator with power over anything related to electricity. You have one regulator with power over everything relating to future contracts, right? Now, this battle has been a legal battle on the jurisdiction point has been ongoing for a while. I think the genesis of the dispute was back in 2008, right? 2009 or 10 is when the Bombay High Court came out with a judgment effectively saying that there is a regulatory overlap between these two regulators in terms of the statutes from which they garner their jurisdiction or their power. And effectively, you will require a legislative amendment. Since then, there has been an appeal before Supreme Court, which unfortunately has been pending since 2010. So, in my mind, while you could, like I said earlier, you could fix the notification, which is clearly hitting the VPPAs. But the bigger battle is that who will have jurisdiction over these transactions.
Right. Yeah.
And to my mind, you will require a legislative amendment. Now, while the Ministry of Power has come out with, I think last year in 2020, they've come out with some sort of clarificatory note on this. Thereafter, we've seen the CERC come out with the amended power market regulations as well. I don't see any sort of clarity coming through in terms of legislative amendment till such time the Supreme Court decides on this matter. And I mean, it's anyone's guess when that is going to happen. It's already been 10 odd years. So this is where we are stuck. So one, like I said, regulation, the notification, restricting commodity derivatives in electricity, that needs fixing. And secondly, these are the broad two issues. There are a couple of other things as well, but let's just restrict this to these two broad issues. The other one is the Supreme Court judgment and the fixation of who will have jurisdiction over these contracts.
So just a quick insight from what we have been kind of researching and studying about. So in the US, where the VPPs are allowed, the physical power is sold on spot market, which is governed by FERC, that's the Federal Electricity Regulatory Commission. And the financial transactions are governed by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. So there is a chance of adopting a similar approach, and because these are two very powerful regulatory bodies, and how do you see we can reach a middle ground, and do you see that happening? What needs to be done for that? What are your views on this?
Look, as far as middle ground is concerned, there was news. It was reported in 2020 that CERC and SEBI have come to some sort of a concurrence on this issue. Now, going by that, it says that something similar to what is in the US, that CERC will only have jurisdiction on physical delivery of power, right? So effectively, a VPPA will not be covered when we talk about physical delivery of power, right? Because as you know, in a VPPA, the power is sold to a power exchange. The ultimate buyer is just buying the attribute, right? So even going ahead with this in mind, there is still ambiguity on whether there are, even if you say that there are two aspects to the transaction and there could be separate regulators on there, the point is that VPPA, as per the concurrence that was reported between CERC and SEBI, it will completely fall in the domain of SEBI, because as you know, a bilateral transaction for purchase sale of power is not regulated by CERC. It's outside CERC's right? So when you talk about physical delivery, so we'll have to have some sort of a hybrid. It's possible that two regulators can look at two separate aspects of a transaction, but then we need to clearly give them power, de-alienate each one's jurisdiction as far as those two aspects are concerned. But of course, the best case scenario is that you have a single regulator dealing with all aspects of a transaction. Else, in case of a dispute scenario, you are going to be in a soup. Especially, and I don't think we are comparable with the US when it comes to this, right?
Yeah. Just drawing a parallel, like if there's something we could explore along.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just another question. So is there a regulatory sandbox solution that can be looked at in your view?
Well, that's a difficult one, because the general principle that we follow in India is that wherever there is a special statute, that overrides anything which is generic, right? Now, going by that logic, CERC, given that it's it's an electricity regulatory commission, and it's therefore has a special aspect that it needs to look at. Going by this legal principle, CERC should have jurisdiction. But then you can, argue to the contrary, saying that any commodity derivative or a future contract is also, that legislation is also special to that extent. So to my mind, the solution at the end of the day, I don't think, like I was alluding to earlier, that in the Indian context, it's difficult for a hybrid solution to work. So we will need a legislative amendment, which which clearly opens the path or creates the path for a transaction of this nature, and which needs to be spearheaded, to my mind, by a single regulator.
Thank you. Thank you. Very useful, Amar. Thanks. Sangeeta, I think it's important to bring in the exchange perspective also now. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Varun. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Rajesh. Are you there? Yes. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here today. We have been discussing various alternative routes for procurement. And of course, one of the major routes that have come up in the last year has been the green exchange market. And congratulations to you on completing the year, and over 2 billion units are being traded. My question is not just related to the green exchange, but also is related to sort of deepening the entire exchange market in India. Right. For example, I was looking at the numbers, and a lot of the sellers of power is DISCOMs and the buyers as well. I know Vedanta made big news as being one of the buyers, but predominantly it is the DISCOMs selling excess power and DISCOMs buying to meet their demands. How do we encourage the CNI market to sell? And of course, Pinaki can also answer this later to some extent. But first, Mr. Rajesh, how do we encourage more CNI participation in this market? How do we make it more deeper, more liquid? That is my first question to you.
Thanks, Sangeeta, and thanks for having this debate, and very interesting for me. I'm very happy to listen to this debate, because earlier we only used to talk about it, BPPA and green and a lot of options we were talking, and we were trying to create definitely more liquid one single market. But India being so diverse, we get different views, and then we think of different markets. And though we have a day market, we wanted that day market should become more liquid, and we should accumulate all the liquidity there, and that should give the most benefit to the participants, and that includes CNI customers also. But somehow when we talk to policy makers and planners, and then also industry, then there was an opinion that we should have a green market, separate green market. Why in India we talked about green market? Because in India only we have given all these waivers. One waiver is on interstate transmission charge, and similar benefits have been passed on in terms of scheduling also. Like you give flexibility in terms of scheduling, 15% you don't charge any penalty. Beyond that only you charge. So when you differentiate these two sets of generation, then only we think to need, then there is a need created that you create a separate segment also. Had there been no waivers and no differentiation in scheduling methodology, probably we would have loved to have everything coming in day market, and then CFD should operate to get whatever. Because people want to have a freedom. They don't want to tie up with some generator. When generator will sell, then they will draw. When this is not selling, I will not be able to draw. If I draw, then I will be penalized. So all this becomes very rigid. When you go through a CFD kind of mechanism, then it's very clean that you come to exchange whenever you need. A generator will also come to exchange whenever he has something to sell. And when both are matching, you take advantage of CFD mechanism. If you are surplus, then you sell in the market and get the market rate. When you have an excess demand, then you could go to the market and get it. So from my perspective, one is that you remove all the waivers and all the benefits. You treat conventional and RE same, and then you bring everything into one market, and then you have a CFD mechanism in place to operate. And this is good for CNI customer, definitely, because CNI customer is not so big. Like distribution company can handle everything. They have some green segment, they have large green segment, they have large conventional segments. They can play in both of these two markets and take advantage. But CNI customer is very small. And he will not like to bifurcate something buying from distribution company, something buying from green market, and then there's another element coming from CFD or VPPA. So given a choice, we should create one single liquid market, and then everything should operate through market. If it is conventional power, then they can use the CFD mechanism. If it is RE, then also you can use CFD mechanism. And virtual PPA is anyway, that is a good instrument for taking care of green attribute going to ultimate buyer.
Yeah.
Now, because we are diverse, that is why we have created green market, and it's functioning well. And as you said, one of the corporates is also taking advantage. But largely, you will not find corporates comfortable in coming to this market. So, as I heard many of you that now this is the time we should talk about either removing this all kinds of waivers, equalizing, or giving same kind of treatment to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we have been also talking since early days that if early days when renewables came, then they said, okay, they were selling under feed-in tariff. They were very comfortable not having any schedule. Then first time we brought and scheduling, and then we gave some kind of flexibility. Now we should start removing those flexibility, or maybe giving a smaller ones. So maybe 15 to 10, 10 to 5, and then it can be 0. So anyway, this new draft of DSM regulation actually does that, and I'm happy that we should move in that direction. And maybe on waivers also, by after 2022, we'll remove those waivers, and that will be good thing for the whole system. Because anything good can happen only when you remove all the handicaps, and you let the renewable stand on its own feet, and then all the costs which are required to take care of imbalance, that they should be able to bear. And if it is not, then of course now there are technologies like batteries are there, so you can take care through those batteries. You can also think of creating virtual power plants. Today, actually, one more thing which what we are doing wrong is asking a hybrid to tenders, where we are again putting them together. We are mandating to put them together. We should leave it to market to explore that what can be done in terms of virtual power plant. You can create with one battery. You can use some gas power plants. So you can keep on building that virtual power plant over the years. Not that you put a limit, okay, 400 megawatt, you put a battery and then you will be together only. And you are tied for the whole lifetime. That should not happen. So one is you give freedom in the market, let people come together, join. Only thing is we need to create an enabling framework. So for aggregation, how this virtual power plants can be aggregated and joined together and can come to the market. That is what we should do. And I've been telling, even in the Great Code, I gave the same suggestion that we should create enabling framework for aggregation. And that, I think, is something which we need to bring, which probably I have not seen that happening from any of the agencies. And not many are also talking about it. But that should be one thing. Because if you are putting a virtual power plant in South, so maybe there can be pumped storage who can join, maybe gas power plant, maybe some solar and wind can also join together. So that freedom will always be there. So initially they can have 100 megawatt, then virtual power plant itself can grow at one time to 3,000 megawatt. We have seen in Germany 5,000 megawatt of virtual power plant. That can happen in India also. Only thing is we need to create a enabling framework.
Okay, got it. Is Pinaki still there? I think he had to leave a little. I think he might have dropped off. Well, I did have a question for him, and I mean, I was thinking about what couple of things that you are saying directly relates to having more power. I mean, making the market more liquid, and one of the things is, it is a big challenge right now for merchant power to operate. Financing is a very big constraint. Internationally as well, if you look at the examples in Nordic markets, the offshore market, for example, it's not really possible to operate or get financing for a pure merchant market, and corporate VPPAs have sort of stepped up and made it possible. I think that's happened with Shell, Amazon's deal itself, so that it balances out the risks. So Sriram would be happy to hear from you if we can explore similar models, especially for the offshore market in India as well. It is absolutely non-existent, I know, but where do you think if such a corporate PPA involved model is possible in India at all at this point of time?
Yeah, I think you covered a couple of points, Sangeeta. I think if you look at the transaction you mentioned in Netherlands, it's really a CFD, that sets a floor price for the project to come up, an offshore wind plant to come up. And they started with, when they started this offshore wind tendering in the CFD mechanism in Netherlands, the subsidy was huge. And now the recent round, the subsidy was zero, right? It became, and then they allowed that sleeved product to be sold to any corporate customer. Because there's a demand for the renewable energy product, and because offshore wind has such high PLF, it's almost dispatchable renewable energy, right? I mean, we should talk about that in India as well. In products like offshore wind, and they need to be enabled because even gas for that matter, right? It's dispatchable, right? The externalities in India are not priced in. For example, the coal externalities are not really priced in, right? So if you think about the offshore wind product in Netherlands, it's really a dispatchable sort of high PLF product that has then sort of been allowed to be sleeved to a corporate customer, and the subsidy is shrinking, and eventually becomes zero. And that's the kind of stuff you can kind of drive towards, right? Eventually, you need enabling mechanisms, as Mr. Rajesh mentioned, that allow new products to come to the market, whether it's an offshore wind product. You can enable them through a couple of mechanisms. One of them has already been proposed. The REC multiplier product has been proposed, for example, right? That's present in Korea today, right? Korea has a REC multiplier product for offshore. So the different technologies have different REC multipliers. This is not an India-specific concept. It is there in Korea, for example, at least one market I know about. And the CFD mechanism is there in Netherlands. It's there. It's coming up in Japan. They're transitioning from an FIT to an FIP, feed-in premium, where essentially there is a floor price the premium is setting up. You can sell to the exchange. You sell it through the exchange. There's a floor price the exchange is the CFD providing, and then you sleeve the product to an corporate off-taker, right? Because everything goes through an exchange there, right? And the retailers can provide that product. And someone for example, if the enabling mechanism is set up, as Amar said, then someone who has membership on the CERC membership can provide that service, right? Can sleeve that. So there has to be enabling framework, both on the technology side and then the product side. I think a lot of conversion needs to happen. Eventually, I understand, obviously, there's near-term stuff on the open access and all that. But if you take a slightly longer-term view, where you need to have different products coming in, enabling framework through the sleeving VPPS to enable these new products to happen.
Sangeeta, if I can add to what Sriram said, that good part is that now planners and policymakers, ministry is actually working towards providing this FIP, as he said, in Japan, and then there is a multiplier. And I remember in 2014 suggesting this multiplier. So actually we suggested two multipliers. One was vintage multiplier and second was technology multiplier. And that, of course, that time probably offshore was not being talked about, so it did not make much sense. But it is anyway a good idea that you bring new technology, and there is a mechanism there. And today, actually, there is no mechanism. So for offshore, unless you provide a subsidy directly, you cannot operate. But if you bring a market instrument like multiplier, then no need to support. Market will support those generators. So good thing is that now we are really seeing that there is a talk about VPPA. There's talk about CFD, capacity addition through CFD. There's talk about multiplier. So whatever probably industry is talking, today the ministry is talking about it. Only thing is when sometimes they get stuck in one place. where they are not able to see the maybe potential or, but they are convinced with these ideas. And, I think the reason is also clear that now we would like to more we have to meet Paris targets, and also then we actually want to be more secure in energy and more reliable. We have to make our system. So it's happening.
Sure, absolutely.
Sangeeta, if I can ask one question to Mr. Rajesh, if that's okay. I mean,
absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah,
please.
yeah. So there's another concept. I was just wondering, Mr. Rajesh, if the government of India is thinking about it. It's really about in certain countries, like Chile is one example. There's a capacity payment based on the dispatchability of the renewable resource. So there is a two-part tariff even for renewable projects, and higher the PLF of a renewable resource, higher is the capacity payment, right? That enables really like offshore wind, for example, it has a very high PLF. That means it's generating during the hours of the day that you need it. So are we thinking on those lines? Is there any sort of thinking on those lines for renewable projects?
Yes, actually, that is also happening. See, why we needed this kind of mechanism, not that we want to support this offshore, but otherwise, what is happening? We have 380 gigawatt of capacity, and we have 200 gigawatt of peak demand. Now, there is always a discussion that whether we have sufficient capacity today, and what should be the mechanism to ensure that always you should have that kind of capacity to meet your requirement all the time, 24/7, 365 days. Now, only mechanism by which you can achieve this is to have a capacity market. Like, you should first look at what capacity you need, and then you should ensure that that much capacity should come into the system. And when this capacity is available in the system, you should leave them free to sell their energy. Today, what is happening in Indian power sector, the mindset is that capacities and energies are bundled together. When you buy capacity, you buy energy also from there. Now, that we need to decouple. So we should see that when we talk about capacity, it is only capacity, and we should make them availability fee based on their, as you said, availability factor. And second part will be energy, and energy will be dispatched on merit order. So at any time somebody has a fix in that merit order, he will be able to dispatch it. So that thought is also very much there in the sector. Only thing again that is not being talked about widely. But I think Sangeeta, you can do that also. Next time we can have a separate session on capacity markets, what kind of capacity market we need, how we should decide that, okay, one is that overall at India level, country level, what should be capacity availability. And here again, you put some factors. So for wind, you can put a factor of 20%. For solar, it is lower because it is only available during midday, not during evening peak. Coal has got very high availability factor. Hydro has got good factor. So all of that combined together. So once you do that calculation, really you find that 380 gigawatt is just sufficient for us for meeting a peak demand of 200 gigawatt. And if you go beyond 220, then this 380 gigawatt is not adequate to meet your requirement. So then you need to create think of planning for new capacity.
Absolutely. It's a conversation in itself.
Yeah. And resource adequacy through capacity market is something which is a discussion. It requires a discussion. And there is a thought in the ministry. I also got surprised when I met someone and then he was talking about it. So this is something big, great that now what industry is thinking. Our ministry is also thinking almost at par on those lines.
Okay, that's good news. And I think I'm going to take you up on that offer and come back to you on that at a different time. Sriram, you can join in at that point of time with us too. So we will actually have a good deep dive into it at a later time. But I want to come back to, and I'm cognizant of time, we have 5 to 7 minutes to go. So I just want to talk a little bit more about the enabling frameworks that have been brought up again, time and again. So a couple of things that we've been hearing yesterday, Mr. Amitesh Sinha was in the opening session session, he alluded to having, RECs become, including eCerts as part of RECs as well. So that really adds to the kitty for a consumer like Amazon who wants to, meet the last mile 100% connectivity, so to speak. So, if you had more options, so how far are we there? And the other thing I would like to quickly understand is from, enabling a new technology through regulations, as Sriram said in the beginning, is, the ancillary market. Right now, there isn't enough revenue models for storage to come forward without, another revenue stream. And ancillary markets could be a very interesting route for that as well. So where is that? Where do you think that, how far away are we from that ancillary? Of course, we have regulations, draft regulations in place, which is quite great. But what about the eCerts and the trading market? Can we make that a large one going forward?
Yeah, actually, I think we have to go beyond the eCert and REC when we talk about fungibility across these, because one element which is common between them is carbon. So we should be talking about a market for carbon trading. Then automatically these RECs and eCerts can be subsumed there. They are actually a smaller part of the whole thing. So actually, what China has done recently, they have issued a market for carbon, what they call as Chinese CERs. And I'm very confident that that kind of market should exist in India also. So basically, we should be talking about carbon. And ones who reduce carbon emission, they should be incentivized. Once they increase the emission, they have to penalize. Like in power plants, if you create this kind of market, automatically renewables will become more viable. So those, we can give allowances to carbon, this coal-based power plants, where you can emit some of the carbon. But if you go beyond a limit, then you have to pay a penalty or you have to buy CRs. And if you are doing better in terms of your benchmark, then you should receive CER. So, and then you can then later merge RECs also into it. eCert has an element, of course. eCert is something for efficiency. So anyone should use these, can do efficiency betterment. And anyway, that makes sense. But there is a carbon element. For that, you can also include eCert into this mechanism. So I think now we should be talking about more comprehensive mechanism rather than REC and eCert. That can be a carbon, that can encompass power, it can encompass fertilizer, industry, transport sector, EV will become part of it. So it is, we now should be thinking of much more wider role. And second, Sangeeta, second question was on the ancillary market for making batteries viable. I feel that today the ancillary draft, that regulation is only for secondary and tertiary. So secondary is like 15 minutes and tertiary is beyond 30 minutes. So that is good, but it's not good enough for battery, because battery is something which is more capable. It's like some big potential thing used for very smaller purposes. Because for that, there are other elements also which can be utilized. So actually, batteries can be used for primary reserves also, which comes in seconds, and that is something where you can find the batteries can become more viable. So I think ancillary is one step going secondary and tertiary market, tertiary reserves market. That's of course we are moving in right direction, but the primary also we can think of maybe in 2 years or 5 years time. Then primary reserves market should also be created. And that can make batteries more viable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are really coming close to our end time. Unfortunately, we have two of our panelists who had to leave. So if I would ask Sriram and Vikram as consumers and as also solution providers, in the next year or two, what would your wish list be for the government of India as well as for the market? What would your wish list be to add new solutions for corporate procurers?
Vikram, why don't you go first?
Sure. Thanks, Sriram. So I think Pinaki summed it up very nicely, and probably I'll need to pay him royalty for that. You using that word, he said you need to unleash all the options, right? And I genuinely think that's the right thing that needs to be done. There is no silver bullet for corporates like us who have very ambitious sustainability goals, like reaching net zero carbon by 2040, which is 10 years ahead of Paris Agreement timelines, or also using 100% renewable energy across all our operations by 2025. We'll need multiple options to kick in, which means that we will need unrestricted open access. Um, you know, Restrictions around contract demand, banking, etc., to go completely in tandem. Otherwise, there's no way we can anyway meet our 100% RE goals. I think VPPA is a globally a very popular option. It can be a very viable option in India, VPPA CFD. The reason for that is many. I think I spoke about it earlier as well. One, it allows you to scale, your RE procurement. Two, it reduces or even does away with all the dependencies on government subsidies, taxpayer money, etc. All that is not required to really start and support a new RE project. Three, I think it also does away with the need to solve for all the procurement complexity in every state that you operate in. So you don't have to be physically present in the same state to provide me power, and I don't need to solve for that procurement complexity in that state. It can be in a different state, right? And lastly, and I think most importantly, why I believe this is a great model for India is because it's an additional contract. It has no impact on my existing, intent or contract to buy power from my state utility. So that continues. This is an additional contract that we sign with the power producer. And it's a win-win situation for everyone, right? The biggest pushback we get is that the moment you're going to a renewable energy route, the utilities feel that utilities feel that it might impact revenue, etc. But in this case, there is no such thing. You'll continue to take power from your state utility, but you will sign a VPPA, have a CFD, and use the environmental attributes from the producer. So I think that's one, and I think that's the reason why almost I would say 80% of corporate PPAs today in the US are virtual, right? And it kind of goes to show how popular or convenient it is both for a CNI consumer as well as for a power producer. I think that's very important. Of course, I think a lot has been already said about the need for clarity in terms of the accounting treatment. Whether it's a derivative, whether it will be CERC, SEBI, who will be the regulator. I think those things are required. And I think just one last point I will make, because I think there was a discussion around green tariff. So I just want to say that as a CNI consumer, we need to increase more options of RE procurement through the grid, but they need to be at equal to or cheaper cost than your regular tariff.
Price.
Yeah, it can't be at a premium. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense for a CNI consumer to pay premium for for RE.
Absolutely.
So I think that's how I would sum it up.
Wonderful.
Sriram.
Thanks, Vikram. I think maybe I'll take a slightly longer-term view. First of all, I want to say Shell is a serious long-term, integrated energy player, right? We look at it from energy perspective, right? So I think from our perspective, there needs to be strong market signals, policy and advocacy, and for new products and technology to come in, right? I mean, whether it's blue hydrogen, whether it's capacity payments, whether it's REC multipliers, whether it's offshore wind. I think the market needs to, the government needs to create really policy certainty for new products to come in. If you look at our long-term goals, beyond sort of creating frameworks of virtual PPAs, we really need an enabling framework for sort of long-term energy transition to happen, right? If you think about hydrogen, offshore wind, and sort of getting renewables to really high percentage of the energy mix, you need a lot more products in the mix, a lot more enabling frameworks. And I think we really look forward to partnering with MNRE, the Government of India, Bridge to India, WWF. We thank you for this opportunity, and we look forward to partnering with all of you in this journey.
Thank you, Sriram. And final words from you, Mr. Rajesh?
No, yeah, this is good to hear everyone. We talked about whatever. I think I agree with most of the views. Only thing on the VPPA, whether this can go through without getting this issue of the jurisdiction resolved. I think it should be possible, but of course we can wait for that to happen, and maybe any regulator will talk about it only when that issue is resolved. Because that issue was more on whether exchange having a contract for physical delivery or financial contract, can it operate under, and whose jurisdiction it should operate. Actually, that was the issue. We never talked about OTC derivative in those petitions. So that petition is purely on whether these contracts on the exchange, who should, and when such contracts are there on the exchange, who should regulate that. Yeah. So only thing that can give clarity. And here, for PPPA, definitely there will be issues. Somebody has to say, okay, this OTC derivative can go ahead, and who will be the right party. So otherwise, other things are very much there in the making. Capacity markets, CFD capacity addition, and I think other FNS issues are also being resolved. But as Vikram said, this is also very relevant because when we talk about physical delivery of power to CNI customer through networks of state, this is very tricky issue, and this can never scale. This can only we can have a scale of something like the half gigawatt or up to a gigawatt in any state, but even that is very difficult. So if you want to reach to any scale, then you have to create a mechanism where anybody should be able to come to the market, and he is not bothered about what is happening on the other side. He is just putting his power in the system and is getting the money. So.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Rajesh. So I'm just going to very quickly try to sum up each of these topics that we tried to touch upon today are in our long discussions themselves. So I'm sure we really would like, there will be other opportunities where we can do so. I'm sure, like Sriram said, with WWF, we could work at a more in-depth discussion. But for now, I'd like to quickly sum up into sort of a short-term and a long-term view of new procurement rules. Short term, like what Vikram said, and also what Pinaki brought up, unleash the existing available rules to their maximum possible extent, as much as you can derive from them intra-state open access rooftop, and if possible, through the exchanges, the interstate market as well. And that is the very short immediate objective that we can look forward to. Long term, well, let me say medium term, we can look at creating enabling frameworks for both technologies as well as new procurement rules, VPPA being one, technology multipliers to allow for storage plus renewable plus storage plus offshore. Those could be the enabling frameworks in the medium term, and in the long term, level playing field. Where waivers, cross-subsidy surcharges, and tariff rationalizations in a world where all of this is all on the same place, and that's when real the procurement process tends to open up at that point of time. So that is the long-term view that we should all be looking towards. So that's it from me here. And one more time, thank you for everyone for being part of this event. Varun, thank you again for supporting us as a strategic partner from as Ready. And over to you, Ankita.
Ankita, before you go further, I will really thank you that you, Vinay, everyone has done a great job in terms of bringing that kind of discussion in this forum. Otherwise, we don't see that kind of discussion. And I've been to your one session yesterday, and that was also great. So thanks a lot for doing this.
Thank you, sir. And like I said, I will take you up on the offer, and we will continue to take this discussion forward each topic at a time.
Okay.
Yeah.
As Sangeeta, I would also like to plus one Rajesh ji, and thank you, and Bristow India, Varun, Reddy, and WWF. We
Thank you.
Are close partners as well. So
Thank you.
really great, wonderful session, and it was really great talking to all the participants, Sriram, everyone, Amar, Pinaki, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sriram.